Alright, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to continue developing the header. So we've now styled up the full-sized header, but what about making this mobile responsive for low resolution devices? Well, don't forget we have this anchor that is going to open and close this div element. And so what I want to do now is just focus on styling the header and then worry about this link later on. So what I need to do right now is find the breakpoint in which this anchor goes down onto a new line, just like so. So when it goes down onto a new line, I want to style this up. So what I'm going to do is create a media query, and then we're going to say screen, and then we're going to say max width is going to be 590 pixels. After that, what we can do is take a look at styling up these anchors first of all. So I'm going to target the header, then the anchors. I'm going to set the width to 100%. I'm also going to say clear both so that they don't end up having content to the left or to the right of them. Also, we have the border bottom. So I'm going to say border bottom is going to be 1 pixel solid and it's going to be dark brown. And then don't forget, we also have padding on here as well. And we applied that up here. Like so, we have padding 15 pixels to the left and to the right. Now when you set it to 100%, it's going to go to 100% of the parent's width, and then on top of that you're going to have 15 pixels on either side. And of course that's going to lead to scroll bars down here, which defeats the purpose of being mobile responsive. So what I want to do is say at include box sizing. And what that will do is make sure that it includes the padding in the width. So now when I set the width to 100%, it means it's going to go to the parent's width, but it's also going to include and factor in the padding. So when I do that, it's not going to go over the edges. So I can just save that right now and just hit refresh. And there we go. That's looking really nice. But however, we need to think about the first and last child, because don't forget we put specific styles for the first and last child, and even though it's not really visible right here, if we actually take a look and inspect this right now, what I can do is disable some styles. So you can see here we have the header A, and then we're targeting that first anchor child element, and we're adding that padding on there, and you can see it does make a little bit of a difference. Now depending on what glyph or icon you actually have, this is actually quite important. And so what I want to do is, first of all, I want to make sure that we don't have any extra padding on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy out this selector right here and just paste this in down below. So this is the last child, and don't forget the last child has the padding right of 20 pixels, which isn't really a big deal because everything's aligned up on the left edge, but I still want this to be right. So what I'm going to do is say padding, and then I'm going to set it back to the default, which is right here, which is 0, and then 15 pixels to the left and to the right. That way everything is in line. And also don't forget we need to target the first child as well. So let's copy out that and then paste this in and put a comma between the two. So we're going to target the first anchor child element and also the last. And also by default they're all floating to the left. So I want to change this float right to float left. And then what we can do is just very quickly save that and make sure that everything is now perfectly in line. Now another thing is that your icons can be a different size, so you can see that our text is falling out of line. Now this isn't a big deal when it's in a row in the main full size one, but when we've got it lined up vertically, you can really see how the text is falling out of position. So what we need to do is actually set the width of the span. So again, target the header, and then we want to target all the spans inside of the header div. And the first thing we need to do is display as an inline block. That way we haven't got to worry about this, floating to the left and so forth. Because if we display it as a block, then we've got to float it to the left, and then things are going to go down onto a new line. So in this case, I'm saying inline block. The next thing I need to think about is the width. So I'm going to say the width is going to be 20 pixels. Again, you can vary it, but I'm going to make it 20 pixels and the text alignment in the center. The reason being is because some of these are larger than others, and when you've got it all aligned up on the left edge, some of them just look out of place. So what I'd like to do is center up all the icons horizontally with one another. So I'm just going to save that, and we can just hit refresh. And even though it doesn't make a massive difference, we can see now that everything is perfectly in line. So what I want to do now is get this visible. So what I'm going to do first of all is with this selector right here, I'm just going to put body in front of it. Now I'll explain why in just a second. But then what I want to do is copy that selector and then paste it down below in our media query and say display as a block level element. That way it's actually visible. So if I save this now and hit refresh, you'll notice there is our link. Now, why did I actually put the body in front of it? Well, that's because we want the same styling as these anchors right here, including out of the media query and also in the media query as well. So what I'm going to do is copy that selector right there and then paste it in without the body part, and also the same right here, header A, and then we're going to target that anchor. So you can see right here that we could potentially have conflicting styles. So if this selector was the same as this selector right here, then potentially this anchor could show up on the desktop version, which is something that we don't want. So that's why I put the body in there, to make sure this selector gets precedence or a better hierarchy over the other selector. Effectively, it's a game of top trumps. So now that we've done that, I can just very quickly save this and hit refresh. Now notice I can't see anything, but it has got a little bit taller, and I do know that there's a link there via the cursor indicator. Now the reason why I can't see anything is because, don't forget, with the actual header div, that had the background color of brown, not the link itself. The link is actually transparent when I'm not hovering over it, and then when I hover over it, then I get to see the background color of the link. So I'm going to have to set the background color right here. So I'm going to set the background to brown, and then also what I'm going to do is put in the text alignment, and I want the text alignment in the center. So I'm just going to save that now, and I'm going to hit refresh. So now you're able to see the link, but we don't have the hover state right here. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take a look at the header A and then take a look at the hover state, and then simply I'm going to add on to this selector with another selector. So this one is going to target that link, but only when it is being hovered over. Now also don't forget, with this selector right here, we're targeting the body first, and that is setting the background color, which we're setting the background color here as well. So again, we need to make sure we're on the same level. So I'm going to say body header underscore open hover. So when we hover over it, we should now get a nice yellow background, and the text color should change as well. The next thing I want to do is take a look at styling up this span right here. Now again, I could do all of this stuff inside of the media query when it's actually visible, but I'd rather do it right at the top, because again, I'd rather just keep everything in line and sort of together the way that I like it traditionally. But again, it's entirely up to you how you want to program. So what I can do is target that anchor, and then I can target the span that resides within the anchor. So the first thing I need to do is set the font family to Liger, so we get that web symbol font. Then also I'm going to set the font size to 30 pixels, and then I'm going to tell it to float to the left. And the reason being is because if you make this larger than this font right here, it's going to move it down on the baseline. So this text is actually going to move down with the actual size of the span, so the baselines meet. So again, to get rid of that anomaly, we simply say float to the left. And I'm just going to save that now and hit refresh. So now we have this really cool button. So now let's make this button functional. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it with classes. We're not going to just do the simple hide and fade away and so forth in JavaScript. We're just going to be toggling a class inside of JavaScript. So by default, what we want to do first of all is take our header div with all of these links in here and hide it when we go to a certain resolution. So I'm just going to say display none. And so when I do that, you can save this now, and automatically it will hide, and then when you go out, you'll see it will come back again. So now that we've done that, when I click on this, I want it to add a class onto the header div that is in fact going to display it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the DOM, and then what I want to do is add the class open. Now when this class is on this particular element, I want it to then display as a block level element. So how do we do that? Well, we target the ID, header, but then we need to overpower this selector, so we don't put any space in there, we just say .open. So that means target the element with the ID header and also the class open. That way it's going to overpower this selector right here, and we can say display as a block level element. And so now you'll notice with the class, we get it displayed, and without that class, you will notice that it will, of course, disappear. And so now what we need to do is program that and toggle that class with JavaScript. And first of all, just put in the $ and say function, open and close brackets, and open and close parentheses, just like so. So what this will do is it'll wait until the DOM has finished loading, and then we can start to execute commands and also event listeners as well, because don't forget we have to wait until everything's loaded before we can actually listen out for events on those particular elements. Otherwise you could end up breaking the JavaScript. So what we're doing is we're just simply waiting, and then once it's finished loading we can start executing jQuery. And so now what I can do is, first of all, I can target the element with the ID of header open. So you write it a lot like a CSS selector with jQuery. And then I say .on. So when I say on, the first parameter is going to be what event are we listening for in order for this to trigger a function. And I'm just going to say click. So as soon as I click on it, we are then going to run the function. That's the second parameter, and it's divided up with a comma right there. So once the user has said, yeah, I'm going to click on that, it's going to fire off this function. So inside of that function right there, we can start to execute commands. So now I can say, well, what I want to do is target the header div. So now don't forget that what we need to do is toggle that class. So what I can do right now is say .toggle class, and don't forget put in a capital C right there. This is camel casing, and what we want to do is say toggle the class open. So again, that's just so easy. So every time we click on it, it's going to check to make sure if it has that class. If it does have that class, it's going to take the class away. If it doesn't have the class, it's going to add the class. So by default, it doesn't have the class. So then jQuery is going to add the class, and so on and so forth. So if I save that and just hit refresh, you'll now notice we have a perfectly working menu. Now the reason why I've done that is because no matter whether this menu is open or closed, when we go into desktop mode, the menu is always visible, or the header div is always visible. But however, I can easily illustrate this by simply changing it from toggle class just to toggle, and then getting rid of the parameter and saving this, and now you'll see what the problem is. So if I hit refresh, yes, this is working wonderfully, but now the menu is hidden via the style attribute. And now when I go to make it larger, you'll notice the anchor disappears, so I can no longer click on it and get that header div back. So that is why I use the class. So even though that class is being applied to that header div, it doesn't matter whether it has the class open or doesn't have the class, because that's all controlled inside of the media query. So thank you for watching this lesson, and join me in the next lesson where we'll start to take a look at developing the profile page.